We're just about to plant a small pink dogwood. It's Cornus Florida rubra. A couple had been planted here previously, but they were planted too deeply and they struggled and then they died. So this is a replacement. We're just doing a single replacement rather than two, slightly different placement. And we'll take another look at this when it's done. So removing the ball from the pot gives us a chance to examine the lower stem for any sort of defects or girdling that may have occurred if this material's been on for too long, or if this material's been on for too long. So we're about to cut all that off. And that'll also give us a chance to examine the root ball itself as we prepare to plant the tree. And it's recommended that this material be removed entirely. The burlap can be removed in whole or in part, but at least the top half of the burlap should come off, as it can have a negative effect on how water behaves when the plant is irrigated. And so all of this up front will contribute to the long-term health of the tree on the back end. Now it's recommended that the size of the planting hole be at least 2 times the size of the diameter of the root ball. And in a clay soil, I would absolutely adhere to that. Clay is a lot tighter. It can be a little more difficult to work with, but this is a very, very sandy soil. It's moist right now, but it's very loose and friable, and so the planting hole is a little bit smaller here. It's just a bit larger than the root ball itself. The top of the existing ball is here. The soil line is here, and this will settle a little bit once it's been wetted a couple of times. But once we removed the tie material, here's the soil line from the planting container. And so I'm pretty confident that, given the size of the ball and the depth that we're planting, that the tree's got a pretty good chance. We'll finish with the planting hole itself, and we'll put a small water ring around before we mulch and stake the plant. But so far so good. So we're getting down to finishing touches. The tree's planted, the water ring was built up, and now we've mulched. Now the majority of the mulch is on the top of the water ring and along the outside edges. And this is designed to kind of create as large a dedicated space for the tree's root system to establish into as possible. Another consideration is keeping, and it's hard to tell here, but keeping a depressed area here. So you see the soil line that we were concerned about previously. It's here, and we've only got maybe an inch of mulch right there at the base of the tree coming out, and then once you get out here, it's a couple of inches deep and down the sides of the water ring. When we tied the tree, use a couple of regular 6-foot steel T-posts, but we use this poly chain. It's a plastic chain style tie. We like it because you've got pretty endless customization options where the tie is concerned. It's a flat surface, so it doesn't put too much pressure on the stem, and we're able to leave a gap. So as the tree establishes, should that diameter begin to increase, there's plenty of room for the increase to occur. And of course, we only intend for the tie to be on for the first full growing season. Best case scenario, the roots have gotten out into the surrounding soil well enough at the end of the first full growing season to permit us to remove all that tie material. Now, the final thing we're going to do is install an irrigation bag. That's more for the customer's peace of mind, the homeowner. That way they can come out, fill the bag. It will slowly water the tree, and then they won't have to worry whether or not the tree is getting the right amount of water over a particular period of time. So we'll add that, and then we'll wrap this thing up. So these bags have been on the market for quite a long time. They're pretty nice because you can fill them up at whatever interval you deem appropriate. And you know, obviously that's based on the season, the temperature, and so forth. But a bag this size can be used on a tree from 1 to 3 inches in diameter, provided the stem is tall enough. This one was right at the threshold. Those lower scaffold branches in the top of the bag meet. I'm not too concerned about that. In fact, in the past, and still from time to time, people recommend wrapping the trunks of small trees. One thing I enjoy about these bags is that they have the added benefit of protecting that lower stem. The bag is intended to be temporary, right along with the stakes and tie. This is simply a good way to help get the plant established. The homeowner can use it as they see fit afterwards. They're reusable as long as their material integrity is sound, and so it's a decent investment, something that can be used more than once. So here's the finished tree. We were able to remove the burlap and twine. We were able to dig an adequately deep planting hole, deep and wide. We were able to work with the soil line and the soil line in the container to get a decent match and interface between the root ball and the native soil. We've got our stake and tie material installed. We did a very, very modest amount of pruning. Some still recommend pruning at the time of planting. We have found and prefer to only prune things that are either obviously in conflict with themselves, so crossing branches, rubbing branches, things like that, or perhaps small limbs or branches that were damaged during transport. We had very little of each, and so we kept pruning to a bare minimum. Added the gator bag at the end, filled it up. A little bit of supplemental water around the root ball, but the bag will slowly drain out over a period of hours. This will help settle the soil, it will help remove air pockets, and it will make sure that that root ball is adequately moist, so this thing can get started getting out into the surrounding soil. It's pink dogwood, Cornus, Florida, rubra.